All right, let's get right into it. We're asking a question that honestly feels more and more urgent with every single headline. Is World War III no longer a question of if, but when? So let me ask you this. Could we wake up one day, turn on the news, and find out that World War III has already started? Now, look, this isn't just some crazy hypothetical. It's a real question being asked by people in the know. And to see why, we have to look at the facts on the ground. Okay, first, just look at this number 60. That's the number of major armed conflicts that were raging in 2023. It is the highest number ever recorded. Think about that. The world is basically a tinderbox right now, where any one of these conflicts could be the spark that sets the whole thing off. And then there's this 12,241. That's how many nuclear weapons are still out there, according to SIPRI data. That's enough to, end everything, multiple times over. The ultimate nightmare weapon of the last century? Yeah, it never went away. And maybe this is the most important piece of the puzzle. For the first time in history, we have three, not two, but three major global powers locked in this intense competition: the US, China, and Russia. And all of them have nukes. This is a totally new game. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? All right, so to really get a handle on the dangers we're facing today, we've got to take a quick step back. Let's look at how the entire world order got flipped on its head. For most of the last century, things were kind of simple in a terrifying way. After World War II, you had two superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union, a bipolar world. Then the USSR collapsed, and for a while, it was just the US on top, the unipolar moment. But that time is long gone. Today, we're in something totally different, a multipolar world. And multipolarization isn't just a fancy word for more countries have power now. The key part is that these new powers, they have totally incompatible visions for how the world should work. Their goals are different, their values are different, and when you have that, working together becomes almost impossible. And competing, well, that becomes the new normal. So, with the world changing this dramatically, it only makes sense that war itself would change too. And believe me, it has. The whole face of war is different now. Yeah, if you're picturing a new world war kicking off with, tanks rolling across a border and a big declaration on TV, you're probably thinking about the last war. The conflicts of today, they're fought in the shadows. They're fought with proxy armies, with cyber attacks, economic sanctions, and huge disinformation campaigns. The battlefields are everywhere. Take proxy wars, for instance. This was a classic Cold War move, right? The US and the Soviets would back opposite sides in a smaller conflict so they could fight each other without, starting Armageddon. Well, they're back in a big way. It's the number one tool for major powers to weaken their rivals without risking a direct head-on collision. But maybe the most important idea to understand about modern conflict is this thing called the gray zone. It's that murky space between war and peace. It's where countries are constantly poking and prodding each other with hostile actions, things that are definitely not friendly, but are just sneaky enough, just deniable enough to not be considered an official act of war. And this quote just nails it. Why would you launch a missile and face immediate political backlash when you could just shut down your enemy's power grid or communications? It cripples their ability to do anything, to govern, to defend themselves. It shows you that the first shot of the next war probably won't be a bang, it'll be a blackout. Okay, so all of this sneaky gray zone conflict is happening under a giant dark shadow. And that shadow is, of course, the nuclear threat. So we have to go there. We have to ask the big question. Is the ultimate red line actually on the table again? And here's why the nuclear situation is so much more dangerous today. It's what strategists are calling a two-nuclear peer environment. For the first time in its history, the US has to worry about deterring not just one, but two major nuclear powers at the same time. Russia, with its massive arsenal, and China, which is building up its forces at an incredible speed. Think about it like this. For 70 years, the whole idea of nuclear peace was based on a two-player game of chess. It was complicated, but manageable. Now, it's a three-player game, and that is way, way more complex and unpredictable. Just look at China's projected arsenal by 2035. That alone completely changes the board and rewrites all the old rules. And if you want some perspective on this, here it is. The doomsday clock. Right now, it's set at 89 seconds to midnight.
According to the scientists who run it, that is the closest humanity has ever been to wiping itself out. I mean, closer than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Let that sink in for a second.
But you know, for all our talk about strategy and technology, the biggest danger might not be a supervillain's grand plan to start a war. The scariest factor might just be us. Simple human psychology and the potential for a catastrophic mistake.
Because when you look back at history, that's what you see. So many wars don't start because someone has a brilliant plan. They start from a chain reaction of blunders, a series of mistakes, miscalculations, and misunderstandings that just spiral and spiral until it's too late.
And this is pretty much how it happens. It's a chain reaction of miscalculation. It starts with one side doing something ambiguous. The other side doesn't have all the info, so they assume the worst. They overreact out of fear. And boom, before anyone knows it, you're in a conflict that nobody actually wanted. You can see how a small incident in a contested sea or a confusing cyber event could easily kick this whole thing off. There's actually a name for this kind of dynamic. Political scientists call it the Thucydides trap. It's this idea from history that says when a rising power, like China, starts to challenge a ruling power, like the US, the stress and tension it creates makes war not just possible, but the most likely outcome. It's a historical pattern, and we're seeing it play out right now. So, this all brings us back to where we started. If a new world war did break out, what would it even look like? Would we even recognize it?
Because it wouldn't be thought just on a battlefield. A modern global conflict would be a hybrid war, hitting us from all sides at once. You'd have proxy forces fighting on the ground, sure, but at the same time, you'd have cyber attacks trying to paralyze our infrastructure, economic sanctions trying to starve us out, and a constant flood of disinformation designed to make us turn on each other.
In fact, some intelligence analysts are arguing that we're already in it. They look at all the pieces, the proxy wars, the cyber battles, the economic decoupling, the information warfare, and they say this isn't a series of separate crises. This is one big, interconnected, transnational hybrid war that's already happening. And that leaves us with a really unsettling final thought. Maybe we're all looking for the wrong thing. We're waiting for that big, dramatic 1939 moment, that one event that screams World War has begun. But what if that's not how it works anymore? Maybe World War III won't start tomorrow with a bang, because maybe it has already begun, and we just haven't found the right name for it yet.